Well, now that Alexander's got you totally depressed and told you about what's happening in Europe, I'm going to follow along now and get you even more depressed because I'm going to talk to you about what's happening in Canada. So, friends, fellow patriots, and comrades, I will be speaking on refugee resettlement, and I would like to make it clear at the outset that I do not believe that all refugees arriving in Canada are undeserving. It is important that refugees benefit from their opportunity to live in Canada, but of greater consideration is whether Canada benefits from their presence and what the cost is to taxpayers. And will Canada remain safe? How can we possibly vet these Syrian refugees if there isn't a database to confirm the documents? I also want to preface my remarks by explaining why my concerns are more than just the sheer numbers of refugees and the financial cost. 10 years ago, a very smart lady called Bat Yor described in her book Eurabia, which if you've never read it is the one book you should read, what is happening now is simply the culmination of a long-sought plan to convert and subjugate Europe to Islam and destroy Western civilization. North America is not far behind. With Obama's willingness to let in thousands, if not millions, of refugees, and the change in government here at home, the door is now wide open to the influx of untold numbers of possible ISIS and jihadi members. This migration, as Alexander explained, or the hijra, it remains the model to this day for jihadists who seek to populate and dominate new lands. Their migrations are not for the purpose of assimilating peacefully in a new host nation, adopting as their own its traditional and legal systems. Hijra forms a critical ingredient in what the Muslim Brotherhood calls its civilizational jihad. As more Canadians lose sleep with worry about the next Islamic terrorist attack, whether from a lone wolf or organized jihadist cells, we may be missing the most important source of danger, the rise of Muslim migration through federal immigration policy, including our refugee and asylum programs and other Canadian immigration channels. James Bissett, who was the executive director of the Canadian Immigration Service from 1985 to 1990, said the following: "If you take them, they will come." This reality explains the uneasy truth about mass migratory and refugee movements. What might be seen at first as a humanitarian gesture to help resolve a refugee crisis often mutates into an uncontrolled and unmanageable migratory flow of people seeking a better life, and if you keep taking them, they will keep coming. It takes from $25,000 to $40,000 to settle a refugee in a third country, whereas the costs of protecting and caring for a refugee in a camp are a fraction of that amount. According to the U.S. Center for Immigration Studies, the cost of taking one Middle Eastern refugee to the U.S. or Canada and supporting him there for 5 years, 12 Middle Eastern refugees could instead be supported in the Middle East region for 5 years, or 61 refugees could be helped in the Middle East for 1 year. And all this without the security, economic, and other problems that accompany refugee influxes in Canada. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees decide how many refugees or immigrants go to which country, and citizens in those countries basically have no say. In recent years, up to 95% of the refugees coming to the U.S. and Canada were referred by the UNHCR or were the relatives of UN-picked refugees. So in other words, the UN is effectively dictating much of North American immigration policy. It should be noted that the UNHCR is very much under the influence of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. What is the OIC? It consists of 57 member states, which the organization itself states is the collective voice of the Muslim world, and has permanent delegations to the United Nations and the European Union. I'm so worked up, I have to have a drink. The cost of resettling, this is the figures you better start getting ready for. The cost of resettling Syrian refugees was pegged at $100 million during the election and is now estimated at $1.2 billion. That's your money. Obviously, this amount would be much more effectively used by donating it to the UNHCR to help that agency care for the 60 million people under its jurisdiction. Oxfam funding, fair share. According to Oxfam Funding Fair Share Analysis Report for 2015, Canada donated $177 million, which was 98% of its goal. The average of neighboring wealthy Arab countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE fell far short of the goal, averaging only 41%. While Canada's fair share is estimated at 15,000 refugees, it has pledged to bring in 36,000, and Trudeau wants to bring in 50,000. Not one of the above aforementioned Arab countries has taken in one refugee. So, not only do they not honor their financial commitments, they refuse even accepting the refugees. They have clearly stated that they do not want to bring in terrorists. They're smart. No. Instead, for example, Saudi Arabia has offered to build 200 mosques in Germany for billions of dollars. That's what their contribution is going to be. We are bringing in massive medical problems as well. Many migrants have AIDS, syphilis, open TB, mental problems, and many exotic diseases that the doctors don't even know how to treat. German dental professionals have warned the teeth of many immigrants are so bad that they require comprehensive dental treatment, which will cost the taxpayer billions of euros. Adding to this is family reunification. For the 7 decades before the expansion of the family class, the average immigrant quickly became a net contributor to the Canadian economy. Within a decade, and certainly within the lifetime of new arrivals, they were contributing more in taxes and economic production than they were withdrawing in benefits. But that all changed after family reunification became a top priority of Ottawa's immigration policy. The lack of ability to speak either French or English makes it difficult for newcomers to find work, which increases the likelihood that immigrants of any age will end up on some form of social assistance. And finally, the Liberals' apparent goal is to bring to Canada the aging parents and grandparents of new Canadians at precisely the time in their lives when they cost taxpayers the most for health care and senior care. Since these elderly relatives have made few, if any, economic or tax contributions to Canada, their arrival falls upon you, the taxpayer. Dr. Hubert Grubel's Fraser Institute study of a few years ago concluded that each year Canada loses between 16 and 23 billion net on immigration. This is because once one takes into account the social services and other benefits that immigrants and refugees receive, Canada loses. Last Thursday, in the House of Commons, somebody called Martin Bolduc, the Vice President of the Programs Branch at the Canadian Border Services Agency, made a stunning revelation. He stated that most of the nearly 25,000 refugees who have arrived here are far from desperate. In fact, most of them have been housed for years in housing in countries that neighbor Syria, like Lebanon and Jordan. Syrians had fled their country, but they were not getting bombed every day in their new residences. What our government has really done is merely transfer people who were safely housed in the Middle East to safe housing in Canada. This now explains the long delay of many refugees wanting to settle their business back home before coming, as well as the complete discontent upon arrival with their housing, amongst other things. So, now we're creating refugee camps in Canada, warehousing these people in hotels and even Canadian Forces bases. They don't speak English or French, they don't have Western job skills, they don't have Canadian cultural skills, they'll be unemployed, they're bringing their healthcare risk costs here, and then there's the security risk. They're certainly not real victims like Christian Arabs or Yazidis or Kurds. They are not safe in many of the camps, and for the most part have been forgotten. These people have no place to go home to. One of the shocking ways that we are going to house these immigrants is on military bases. The new plan for our Canadian military is to house more than 6,000 Muslim migrants on Canadian military bases divided equally between Ontario and Quebec, turning them into long-term refugee camps. There are 2 in Quebec and 5 in Ontario, from which most of the soldiers and cadets will be kicked out. It is planned that they will stay for 6 months at a time until the next wave of refugees arrive. The estimated cost of bringing in the Syrian refugees is approximately $100 million for each 6-month period. Breaking it down. And I have to say that, in the last week, the figures have changed every 5 minutes. Every report I get has got different figures. But I have to say that my friend Ezra Levant, from the Rebel, he got the figures straight from National Defense. So I printed it out and I've got them all here. So this is all thanks to Ezra. At CFB, Valcartier in Quebec, the estimates look like this. Accommodation, $7.9 million, even though they're kicking out the military personnel. Food, estimated cost is $16 million, and possibly more because of halal demands. Winterization, $2 million. Not sure what that means. Extra garbage pickup, $60,000. Cleaning up the mess after waves of refugees have come and gone, $250,000. Shuttle bus service on the base. I guess you can't walk anymore. $162,000. Driving refugees to and from treatment centers, $162,000. Budget for Arabic language interpreters, $5 million. Remember, these migrants don't speak English or French. Many are illiterate. Millions more are being set aside for their well-being. Security on a Canadian Air Force base, $720,000. Medical, $1.6 million. This is my best. Bottled water, $560,000. This is National Defense. This is their report. Oh, this is a good one too. Washcloths and wipes needed for foot baths before prayer time, $53,000. Religious support, buying Korans and Muslim prayer rugs in mini mosques, $216,000. Just for Quebec alone, they have set aside $46 million for 6 months, and that does not include Medicare. The costs to our country are staggering and never ending. We even have Nobel Prize winner Malala suggesting that Canada donates $33 million towards a $1.4 billion fund to educate Syrian children. We have UNRWA and the UNHCR, we have Oxfam, and even the Pope has his hand out. So far, Justin has pledged $4.3 billion in spending commitments, of which all but $1 billion is to foreign countries. Where our money's going. In closing, I am frightened of Justin Trudeau. He is so immersed in the cult of international celebrity that he has yet to realize that he is not starring in a reality TV show. Bringing in so many Syrian refugees, many not properly vetted, many not speaking the language, many not desirous of assimilating, this eagerness to embrace what he sees as the beauty of Islam and playing up Canada's generosity entirely overrides his understanding of the dangers of Islamic militancy and the Hijra. Soon, his sunny days will be Sunni days. Stephen Harper's Canada was the last outpost, the last place where government was reasonably sane regarding the Jihad threat. Now it is up to individuals like us to stand, no matter how much it costs us, against the forces of oppression and authoritarianism that will become increasingly aggressive, and soon. These are and will increasingly be the times that try men's souls. But the human spirit, the spirit of freedom, will never be wholly extinguished, despite the best efforts of the forces of authoritarianism and oppression. As the bequeathers of a great civilization that sprung from ancient Greece and Rome, from our shared Judeo-Christian principles, and the greatness of English rights, laws, and customs, the Magna Carta. Will we stand aside and watch all of this crumble? This is an invasion of Europe by those that wish to destroy it. And if we all don't raise the alarm now, Europe will be gone and North America will follow. Our constitutional right to free speech is our best weapon, so let's use it. Find your little piece of the battle, and to quote Winston Churchill, never, never surrender. Hosea 4, verse 6 says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Let's not let that happen here.